in the panel in the past year. Thank you.
Questions. Question 1, Dr. LO Wai-kwok. According to the Northern Metropolis Action Agenda recently published by the government, an industry-driven and infrastructure-led approach will be adopted as the key axle for the planning of the Northern Metropolis. And the Northern Metropolis will be divided into 4 major zones. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. As it has been reported that the development of the Northern Metropolis spans 20 years, whether the authorities will expedite the formulation of detailed development proposals, review the amounts of investment in the relevant public works, prepare a list of works according to the work scale, that is large, medium, and small-scale works, as well as set the order of implementing the works according to their importance and urgency, and make planning for manpower resources in advance, so as to prevent drastic rises and falls in the volume of works. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. 2. Whether it will, on the premise of ensuring that the government firmly assumes its leading role in the development of the Northern Metropolis, assess the merits and demerits of different financing arrangements, so as to expeditiously formulate clear financial arrangements. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And 3. Whether, in order to strengthen the Northern Metropolis functions of developing industries as well as attracting enterprises and investments to be served by its 4 major zones, the authorities will actively attract professional talents in industry and commerce from the mainland and overseas to assist in formulating practicable policy initiatives and strengthen the authorities' coordination and execution capabilities. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Development. President, the Northern Metropolis is a new engine for Hong Kong's future growth. As mentioned by the member, it adopts an industry-driven and infrastructure-led approach as its key planning axle. On the 30th of October this year, the government published the Northern Metropolis Action Agenda to clearly outline the blueprint of the Northern Metropolis, including the development themes, industry positioning, major facilities, industry-driven planning, and development timetable of the 4 major zones therein. Having consulted relevant departments, my reply to the various parts of the question raised by Dr. Lo is as follows. 1. There are 3 new development areas, namely Kwu Tung North and Fanling North, Hon CHU Kwok-keung, and Yuen Long South under construction within the Northern Metropolis. Other major development areas are under the planning study stage, among which the land use proposal for Sentient Technopole was released earlier this year. As for the remaining major development areas, that is the Lau Fau Shan, Chin Bei Zhui, and Pak Nai areas, New Territories North New Town, Ao Tam Mei, and Ma Chau Long, the land use proposals will be released within next year progressively. After public engagement, the government will conduct detailed design of the works, arrange phasing for implementation, and make estimations on the expenditure based on the confirmed land use planning as soon as possible. When formulating the work schedules and phasing arrangements, the government will fully consider such factors as the project priority, financing arrangements, implications on public finance, and the manpower capacity of the market, etc. On the other hand, the government and the Construction Industry Council will continue to disseminate to the industry regularly relevant information on the estimated total construction output for the next 10 years, maintain close contact with industry stakeholders, and monitor the supply and demand of manpower in the construction industry. We'll continue to adopt a multi-pronged approach, including making good use of the labor importation scheme for the construction sector launched this July, strengthening manpower training and employment support, and adopting advanced technology and innovative construction techniques to facilitate uplifting the productivity and capacity of the construction industry. 2. The development of Northern Metropolis is an important investment for promoting our long-term and sustainable development. It can release land value and foster industry development, generating enormous economic benefits and revenue, thereby enhancing our competitiveness and improving our quality of life. We have always emphasized that the government takes the lead in planning and implementation of the development of the Northern Metropolis. While the government also welcomes the active participation of the market, for comprehensive preparation, it was announced in the policy address this year that the Committee on the Financing of Major Development Projects, led by the Financial Secretary and the Office for the Financing of Major Development Projects, would be established to evaluate feasible investment and financing options for major development projects, including the Northern Metropolis and Khao Yai Chau artificial islands, assess the feasibility of bringing in private investors for these projects, and examine the impact of the major development projects on government finance to ensure the government's fiscal sustainability. The Financing Committee held its first meeting last week. 3. The implementation of the industry-driven policy not only requires formulating appropriate land use planning, but also an array of support covering industry-specific policies, facilitation measures, and initiatives to attract enterprises and investment. Therefore, the promotion of the Northern Metropolis development is a collaborative endeavor across bureaus and departments. The Steering Committee on the Northern Metropolis, led by the Chief Executive, provides high-level policy steer and supervision for the Northern Metropolis development. Various bureaus actively participate on the relevant industries' development and are working closely and forging ahead. The Northern Metropolis Coordination Office under the Development Bureau is responsible for overall coordination. Using Santien Technopole as an example, following the announcement by the Development Bureau early on the planning proposal for the new land for INT uses, the Innovation Technology and Industry Bureau is conducting a consultancy study on these lands with a view to providing recommendations for different land parcels on the development of specific INT uses in the INT value chain, requisite supporting facilities, land disposal and operation modes, and so on. Furthermore, the government has set up specific departments responsible for attracting businesses and investment, mainly the OASIS, Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises and Invest Hong Kong. After establishing in December 2022, OASIS actively reaches out to high potential and representative strategic enterprises. It has met with over 200 strategic enterprises, among which about 30 of them involving different INT aspects have landed or will land or expand in Hong Kong. Also, Invest Hong Kong provides for all other overseas and mainland enterprises interested in setting up or expanding their operations in Hong Kong one-stop support. External recruitments for the directorate posts of these two departments have either been conducted or are under planning to bring talents from the industries on board. The recruitment and deployment of other staff in the teams will be based on job requirements, and the candidates will be requested to have the relevant work experiences. The Northern Metropolis Coordination Office will continue to work closely with other relevant bureaus and departments in taking forward the industry developments in the area. Thank you, President. Dr. LO Wai-kwok. President, the development of Northern Metropolis involves the resumption of brownfield sites. There are different activities on brownfield sites now, including logistics, storage of machines and equipment, as well as the pre-construction works. The resumption of brownfield sites have an impact on the supply chain of the relevant sectors. My question is, apart from providing subsidies, what kind of measures will the government put in place to ensure that the relevant sectors will be relocated or will be given appropriate rehousing arrangements, and what are the long-term plans? Thank you. Secretary, the development of Northern Metropolis will affect operators of brownfield sites. Apart from monetary compensation, the government has proposed a basket of measures. We hope that through case management, we can assist brownfield site operators to identify appropriate sites for relocation. The relocation will depend on our communication with the brownfield site operators when they'll have to move out of the current sites. In line with our land disposal arrangements, we hope that they can apply for the land they need. Brownfield site operations can be divided into two parts. Some of them can be relocated to multi-storage or multi-story buildings for operation. We'll expedite such arrangement for them. As for the operations that cannot be relocated to the multi-story buildings, for instance, activities that involve storage of large-scale machines and equipment, we will help them identify proper sites for outdoor operations. The operation model will have to be in line with the development of the Northern Metropolis to reserve enough time. Last month, we released the information of the spade-ready site for the coming 10 years. That is the supply. We will push back the resumption of brownfield sites if needed so that we have room to make relevant planning. Thank you. Mr. Lau Kwok-keung. I agree with the industry-driven and infrastructure-led approach for the Northern Metropolis development. We lack relevant policy kits, however, and also there is delay on the construction works of the Northern Link. To expedite works, I wonder if the Development Bureau will review the terms and reference or responsibilities and establishment of the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office. Will it add talents or invite talents to join the office who are familiar with the relevant sectors so that relevant policy kits can be formulated? Also, will there be legislations or administrative measures to help expedite the development of Northern Metropolis? Thank you. Secretary. In response to the first question of Mr. Lau, it involves inviting relevant talents to the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office. Our current practice is that the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office is working closely with other government departments and relevance that helps to attract talents and enterprises. There is division of work. Say, for Oasis, they might have reached out to some enterprises. These enterprises may want to learn about the Northern Metropolis project in terms of what kind of opportunities will be brought to them. The coordination office will brief these enterprises about the information. These enterprises, if they establish presence in Hong Kong, what kind of contributions will they bring to the city? Do they have the relevant experiences that will benefit Hong Kong? Should they be attracted to Hong Kong? The Oasis will make the relevant analysis. In the process of their analysis, they will give their advice and recommendations to the coordination office and other departments. Say how much land these enterprises will need and what kind of facilities are there in the vicinity of the site. ITIB will also come into play during the process. So in our current practice, we do not focus all our manpower on the coordination office. There are also other offices that are involved. We work closely with them. Of course, we'll also monitor the progress of our work under this model and see whether we need to strengthen any work of relevant departments in the process. Mr. Robert Lee. On the financing options of the Northern Metropolis development, will the government consider the 5 tunnels and 1 bridge proposal and issue bonds for financing of the major development projects to alleviate the financial or fiscal deficit and pressure on public funds? And how will the government do that? Secretary. President, we have established the Committee on and Office for the Financing of Major Development Projects. Once we know the budget we require for these major development projects, the Committee and Office will study the different financing options. including the securitization option as well as issuance of bonds. We adopted the operate and transfer model as well as the railway plus property model in the past. All these options will be studied by us. When we have more concrete proposals, we will talk to the relevant stakeholders and listen to their views. Mr. Jimmy Ng. Thank you, President. Infrastructure-led approach is crucial for land development. In the past, there were obstacles in the administrative procedures of the government, and some modules cannot be delivered to the construction sites in time. There are so many major development projects within the Northern Metropolis, and it has to be developed in time so that we can create a livable environment for citizens. Are there any procedures that can be compressed, especially the administrative procedures, so that the infrastructure projects can be completed in time or earlier than scheduled? Thank you. Secretary. The modular integrated construction method is one of the methods we adopt. To make sure the smooth implementation of the method, we need a lot of administrative procedures. We need to store modules. There are also certification procedures. We need time throughout the procedures, and we need to set aside time for approval as well. There is a steering committee under the Development Bureau that looks at the manufacturing of these modules, which usually take place in the mainland, and the delivery of these modules to Hong Kong, the clearance procedures, as well as the certification of these modules. We're trying to remove the relevant barriers, and we're looking into that with the relevant mainland authorities about that. We hope that by the end of March next year, we'll be able to roll out support measures and we'll be able to announce the details to the public. Mr. Kenneth Lau. President, the Northern Metropolis is a new engine for Hong Kong's future development. We need a lot of talents and I&T enterprises. How is the government going to create a good I&T atmosphere and ecosystem within the Northern Metropolis? When granting land, apart from adopting the conventional tender approach, will the government attract tech giants or enterprises with substantial capital and allow them to design construction works or take over superstructure construction works? Thank you. Secretary. Mr. Lau raised two questions. One of them is about our planning. Another is about land tender. On planning for I&T land, we will allow enough flexibility. Say, on the plan, if we identify it as I&T site, we'll adopt a different approach compared to the past. We will allow different purposes on the land. Say, for the I&T park, we need a lot of facilities. We need talent apartments, as well as retail outlets, as well as leisure and recreational facilities to support the development of the entire I&T park. So we will remove the relevant barriers as much as possible so that we don't require relevant approvals when we implement the facilities. In terms of land, we will adopt a multi-pronged approach depending on the policy of the government as well as the development of the relevant industries. As mentioned, the Oasis has reached out to different enterprises. Some enterprises just want a certain floor area. However, for other enterprises, they would like a plot of land to be developed and designed by themselves. So based on the different needs of enterprises, we will put in place different arrangements. We won't rule out the possibility of granting land directly to enterprises and let them develop the land themselves. Mr. Michael Luke, President, the development of Northern Metropolis spans 20 years. We hope the government will release information about how much money it will need for the development. How can the public take part in the development project? We can boost the participation of the public. FTU proposes this idea. Can there be retail bonds issued so that the public can purchase these bonds, and for those who purchase these bonds, they can be given priority to buy the public housing units in the future so that people can take part in the development of the Northern Metropolis and there can be more options for financing. I wonder if the relevant government department has taken into consideration this. Secretary, in terms of issuance of bonds, to promote public participation in major development projects, we will explore this in the Committee on the Financing of Major Development Projects. Currently, the government is issuing green bonds to encourage the public to take part in our green infrastructure works. The ideas proposed by the member just now is broader than this. He did not mention not just about the issuance of bonds. He proposes making a connection between issuance of bonds and the purchasing of future housing units. We will take note of members' comments and we will explore this in our discussion in the committee. Thank you.
Question 2, Ms. Lillian KWOK. Thank you, President. The Education Bureau, EDB, implemented the whole school approach to integrated education, IE, in September 1997 with a view to enhancing the quality of IE and enabling students with special education needs, SEN students, to attend ordinary schools. In this connection, will the government inform this council, given that GDB indicated on 2018 that it would implement the enhancement of the Special Education and Management Information System, SEMIS, in 2019 school year, subject to the availability of resources, of the details and latest progress of the relevant work. 2, whether it will make SEMIS available for use by the Health Bureau, the Labour and Welfare Bureau, and the Hospital Authority so as to provide cross-departmental student support for SEN students. If so, of the details, if not reasons for that. And 3, whether it knows in the past 3 school years the specific direction of the post-school transition arrangements, including pursuing further studies, seeking employment, and admission to hostels made by special schools for SEN students and their follow-up actions, as well as the number of SEN graduates and among them the respective numbers of those pursuing further studies, taking up employment, and admitted to hostels. Secretary for Education. President, the government attaches great importance to the growth and development of students with special education needs, SEN, and has all along been providing public sector ordinary schools and special schools with additional resources, professional support, and teacher training to strengthen school support for students with SEN. In recent years, the expenditure on integrated education has increased by 147% from about $1.5 billion in the 2017 to 18 financial year to about $3.7 billion in the 2022 to 23 financial year. As for the expenditure on special education, it has increased by 44% from about $2.5 billion in 2017 to 18 to about $3.6 billion in 2022 to 23. On our reply to the question raised by Ms. Lillian KWOK is as follows. Parts 1 and 2. The Special Education Management Information System, SEMIS, is a computerized information management system of the Education Bureau, EDB, for collecting and managing the information of students with SEN studying in public sector schools, including special schools, and schools under Direct Subsidy Scheme, DSS schools. The system enables the DAB and schools to understand the needs of students through educational services and the support provided to students so that corresponding policies and measures will be introduced to support students with SEN. The EDB continues to review and upgrade the functions of SEMIS, taking into account the education policies, the development of support measures, as well as students' needs, just so as to assist schools in identifying and supporting students in need as early as possible. The EDB has announced the SEN information transfer mechanism since the 2019-20 school year. Under the enhanced mechanism, the preschool rehabilitation service units affected by the Social Welfare Department can log into an online platform provided by the EDB, prepare and store the electronic version of the Comprehensive Development Progress Report for preschool children with the consent of parents. The EDB will transmit the progress reports through SEMIS to the public sector or DSS primary schools based on the list of primary 1 students to ensure that primary schools can understand the special needs of students concerned as early as possible, so that appropriate support can be provided for their smooth integration into the learning environment of their primary schools. Schools should formulate support measures for the transition of P1 students and record them in the summary of transition support of P1 students in SEMIS. Through relevant functions, officers of EDB can understand from primary schools their planning of support measures and offer professional advice as appropriate. Moreover, EDB established the SEN information transfer mechanism between secondary schools and post-secondary institutions under SEMIS in 2021-22 school year, which allows public sector and DSS secondary schools to, with the consent of parents and students, directly transfer SEN information of school leavers to their recipient local post-secondary institutions or organizations through the transfer of SEN information of secondary school leavers online platform under SEMIS, thereby further enhancing the effectiveness of transition and adaptation of secondary school leavers to post-secondary education. At present, SEN information can be transferred through SENS, and that includes SEN type, a tier of support required, summary of the report rendered, recommendations of special administration, examination arrangements, and medical reports. In some SEMIS provides a platform for information transfer from the preschool through primary and secondary levels to post-secondary institutions or organizations, ensuring that schools or education concerned can provide support for students with SEN at different stages of education effectively. At present, the main objective of SEMIS is to enable EDB and schools to acquire SEN information of students for education purposes. Third parties cannot be given the information without the consent of parents and students. Part 3, EDB is very concerned about the exit pathways of special school leavers and has been providing special schools with resources and support to help students make good preparation for post-school arrangements. Special schools will help their students plan for their pro-school arrangements in accordance with their interests, capabilities, and needs. To prepare students for their adjustment to daily lives after they leave school, special schools would design school-based curricula of unique features such as community training, workplace practicum, and pre-vocational training to train students independent living skills, develop their potential, and integrate into society. Furthermore, special schools will also provide additional training relating to interview skills, vocational skills, assessments, social etiquette, work attitude, completion of personal particulars, and application forms, etc. for the students according to their individual abilities and aptitudes, with a view to preparing them for their future pathways. When students approach the senior secondary level, schools' multidisciplinary teams will discuss with parents on their children's options for post-school services and assist them in applying for appropriate post-school services. Schools generally arrange for school social workers to follow up with school leavers for 2 years through various means. The arrangements include liaising with parents or carers concerned to keep track of school leavers' adjustment to daily lives and, depending on their needs, referring them to district support centers for persons with disabilities or integrated family services centers subvented by SWD, as well as helping them apply for residential respite services under SWD while they are waiting the services. In school years from 2019 to 2020 to 2021-22, the number of special school students who graduated from school upon completion of secondary 6 is 550 559, 584, and 516 respectively. According to information gathered from special schools, the number of graduates pursuing further studies, including vocational training in September the following school year, is 174, 197, and 175 respectively. The number of graduates under employment is 28, 30, and 14. The number of graduates receiving residential care service is 45, 50, and 47 respectively. The number of graduates receiving vocational rehabilitation services or day training services is 217, 196, and 149. It's worth noting that the above figures only reflect the situation in September. Many graduates will eventually receive other services. We will continue to provide special schools resources support for students. Thank you. Ms. Lillian KWOK. Accuracy of information is very important for professionals to assess the needs of SEN students. That's why transfer of information is very important. Now, in the assessment report, there's only assessment on English and Cantonese, but there are more mainland children coming to Hong Kong. They have a SEN literacy reports from class 3A hospitals on the mainland, but it's not recognized in Hong Kong. So is it possible to give them there is no Putonghua assessment in Hong Kong for them, so that's why these children do not receive any support services in Hong Kong. So I'd like the administration to see whether it's possible for further mutual access of information, such as opening up the SAMIS platform, or accepting mainland assessment reports, or giving children Putonghua assessment. Then we could provide more comprehensive services to SEN students, and then professionals will also better learn about the situation with SEN students. Secretary, thank you. President, thank you for the question. Now, we have professionals in Hong Kong who will first do identification, and then children or students will receive suitable services in school. Now, Ms. Kwok mentioned in particular the question of language. Now, professionals speak either Cantonese or English. In Hong Kong, we have ethnic minorities too, other than new arrivals. So on the identification process, professionals have the relevant experience and expertise to make effective assessment regardless of the language. But in any case, we'll see whether there is room to make adjustment to the arrangement. On mutual access or sharing of information, we are more than happy to consider that. And as I mentioned in the main reply, in the current SEMI system, information is used for educational purposes primarily. But of course, the healthcare sector, social welfare sector, and the education sector often have collaborations. And then the committee also conducted some studies some time ago. If there is certain information that is useful to other departments in ensuring the proper development of children, we'd be more than happy to open up the platform for that purpose. We will explore this further with the relevant departments. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Leung. In the main reply, the Bureau explained in detail the arrangements for SEN students after they leave school and so on. But what about my question is about integrated education? Of course, we are now promoting them that as the mainstream. But for SEN students and exit pathways in particular, do you have any special arrangements? No, there are probably more SEN students in northern schools that will need support than SEN students in special schools. So is there a dedicated department to deal with that? Secretary. Thank you, President. Now, on life planning, Yes, we are giving more training to teachers in schools, so they could have better abilities to support students. We have different seminars of different themes. For example, helping SEN students taking care of their further studies needs or career needs. So we want teachers to learn more about life planning for SEN students. And then for secondary senior school students with autism, there are special courses too on their needs. And then there are different various other plans and programs too that provide life planning services to senior secondary students. In the past 5 years, over 70 business partners who provide training opportunities to SEN students. These businesses cover the hotel and catering industry, social services, family services, and so on. There are over 80 students that there are students coming from 80 schools that took part in such activities. So we will continue to work with ordinary and special schools in promoting such effort. Dr. Teck Chi-yun. Integrated education, President, means that it's education for all. In the past decade or so, in terms of resources, training, and policy and measures and initiatives, the government has done much. But then some parents say that for now, integrated education only has form but no substance because it's school-based. How can you make sure that schools could really help students? For example, do we require schools to draw up individual care plans for each SEN students? And apart from resources in school, maybe they could tap into resources in the community to give more support to students. From the part of parents, of course, they want to see whether their children are learning well. And then, and when these SEN students leave school, you need to follow up on the cases too. So what can you do on all these respects to make sure that there is both form and substance in integrated education? Secretary, thank you for the question. Well, we have a whole school approach that's early identification, early intervention, a whole school approach, homeschool cooperation, and cross-sector collaboration. These are the 5 underlying principles in relation to integrated education. So we need different professionals from different disciplines to help our SEN students. Apart from giving regular funding, there are also regular resources and teacher training. And then we also work with other NGOs on multimodal collaboration. This is to make sure schools are able to give support to SEN students. In the past few years, we have rolled out various enhancement measures. For example, we improved the ratio of school-based psychologists, and then on learning grant, we are also providing additional teaching posts. And then we have also created the post of a school-based speech therapist, and we have enhanced the promotion aspect, such as increasing the post, creating the post of senior graduate master, and so on. So we have various measures and resources to give further support to schools. And then we also have a positive parenting education, and then at the parent web page we will give more information, so promote homeschool cooperation. Thank you. Mr. Martin Liao. Now, we want to give support to ordinary schools so that they can take better care of SEN students. In 2017 and 18, the EDB rolls out a new education development model. That's the three-tier model, intervention model. But then we find that only from a study we know that only 40% of serving teachers have received 30 hours or more of special education training. And then in the past academic year, of course, over 3,000 teachers left. So what's the reason why there are less than 30% of the teachers who've received the three-tier intervention model training? And with wastage, a high wastage rate in the teaching profession, will it affect support given to SEN students? Thank you. Secretary. Thank you for the question on teacher training. Yes, you did mention a situation in the past few years because of the epidemic. We suspended face-to-face classes, so teachers did not have the opportunity to receive face-to-face training. And then for the three-tier curriculum training, actually it requires face-to-face training because there are small group discussions or case sharing and so on. It may not be possible to do it online. So in the past few years, because of the epidemic, the number of teachers that could be trained was fewer. But then we have not changed our target. Now that we are back to normal, we will follow up for schools that have not reached the target. We will require relevant teachers to be given adequate training. I can actually share with members that for public sector schools, they have a special education coordination officer, the special education needs coordinator, SENCO, in schools. They are at a higher rank than ordinary teachers. And we've actually recently upgraded it to a promotion rank. That is, upgraded post of SENCO to a promotion rank. So teachers can therefore play a supporting role in schools. Now for teachers who have yet to receive training, they will be given support by SENCOs in their schools. But of course, we still require individual teachers to meet the training requirement. We'll certainly follow up on that as soon as we could. Thank you. Professor William Wong. I must first declare interest, President. There is this IT training program for primary students and secondary students. I'm the chairman of the committee, and this program's under the OXIO. And these programs are to encourage scientific training in schools. And some 80% of schools have benefited from the program. And that covers also special schools. But I think it's not sufficient just to give IT training, teaching materials to these schools as a form of support. So I wonder if the Bureau will try to find out more about the needs of special schools and the students, so that the two ICT programs, the enriched ICT programs that I mentioned, would help to promote training in this respect and arouse the interest of students in IT. Secretary, thank you. For SEN students, IT education or digital learning would actually make their learning more effective. In the policy address, the Chief Executive mentioned that we are going to promote development through INT. So STEAM education is a focus, and we're definitely working in that direction. Professor Wong mentioned different types of schools. There is now more IT training. So there's better IT for all education. We are more than happy to explore with members concerned on what more we can do. Thank you.
Question 3, the Honorable Frankie YICK. Thank you. The government plans to publish by the end of this year the Hong Kong Major Transport Infrastructure Development Blueprint, which will include proposals to construct a number of railways. Some non-rail public transport operators have reflected that with the continuous expansion of the railway network, their room for survival has been shrinking incessantly, even to the extent that they can hardly survive, and they're worried about the future. In this connection, will the government inform this council first, whether it has assessed the impact of various new railway projects on non-rail public transport modes and made advanced planning in this regard? If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Second, given that with the continuous expansion of the railway network, other public transport modes may have a surplus of vehicles, whether the authorities have devised solutions for such surplus vehicles. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And third, given that while the government is promoting the green transformation of non-rail public transport modes, it is learned that as non-rail public transport operators can hardly make ends meet, the relevant work of the government has been progressing slowly. Whether the government will consider, by drawing reference from the approach adopted under the vessel subsidy scheme, procuring green vehicles with government funding and then entrusting their management to non-rail public transport operators. If so, of the details, if not, the government's new measures in place to motivate the sector to expedite grand transformation. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, Hong Kong is a small, densely populated city with high development intensity. To ensure sustainable development and effective utilization of limited road resources, the government has adhered to a public transport-oriented policy. Each type of public transport services plays a distinctive role. Emission-free and high-capacity railway acts as the backbone of the public transport system. Franchise buses serve as the major road-based public transport. Public light buses provide supplementary feeder services in areas with relatively lower passenger demand or where the use of high-capacity transport modes is not suitable. Taxis provide personalized and point-to-point transport services, and all other public transport modes also serve important supplementary roles. Hong Kong's diversified public transport system enjoys an international reputation for providing highly efficient and convenient services across the territory, meeting the traveling needs of the majority of citizens. In the 2022 Urban Mobility Readiness Index jointly published by the Oliver Wyman Forum and the University of California, Berkeley, which compared the public transport systems of 60 cities across the globe, taking account of such factors as the distance to stations, public transport operating hours and reliability, and passenger affordability, ranked Hong Kong's public transport system as the top of the list. Having regard to the importance of maintaining the diversity of the public transport system as well as the balance among various services, the government will continue to facilitate the complementarity of strengths among various public transport services so that members of the public can enjoy efficient services with reasonable choices, while the various public transport services could remain sustainable. In consultation with the Environment and Ecology Bureau, I provide my reply to the various parts of the question raised by Mr. Frankie YICK as follows. First, when taking forward a new railway project, the government will make comprehensive assessments and planning of the public transport services along the alignment, including assessing the degree of impact, devising contingency plans, and examining the provision of additional ancillary facilities such as public transport interchanges. Prior to the commissioning of the new railway, the Transport Department will take into account the anticipated changes in demand for other road-based public transport services brought by the railway project and formulate public transport service adjustment proposals, including arranging feeder services to connect the new railway with adjacent areas, as well as adjusting the existing services that overlap with the new railway service. Given that actual changes in travel patterns of passengers may only be ascertained after the new railway is put into service, the TD and relevant operators will closely monitor the changes in the demand for public transport services after the new railway is in operation and consider further rationalization of routes or frequency adjustments having regard to the actual situation. Resources so saved can be deployed to strengthen the routes in keen demand or to introduce new routes, for example, express services. This can better cater for the traveling needs and patterns of passengers and at the same time enhance the cost effectiveness of operators and thus the sustainability and competitiveness of their services. The government has been adopting the infrastructure-led and capacity-creating planning principles in taking forward transport infrastructure projects. Extending the railway network is part of Hong Kong's overall development process. As new railway projects are taken forward progressively, they would actually stimulate the development of nearby areas, generating new transport demand which benefit both railway and non-railway public transport operators. It may not necessarily result in surplus of non-railway public transport vehicles. In response to development of property and infrastructure projects as well as the changes in economic activities and lifestyles over time, the TD will keep in view the changes in transport demand and make adjustments to public transport services as and when appropriate. With gradual completion of large new development areas in the new territories and population intake of new residential estates, it is expected that passenger demand for various modes of public transport would increase. The Northern Metropolis and Khao Yai Chau artificial islands will even require planning of new public transport networks to meet the new demand. In addition, the increasingly frequent cross-boundary activities also present new growth opportunities for public transport services. Since the full resumption of social activities and cross-boundary travels early this year, franchise buses and green minibuses serving boundary control points have recorded satisfactory patronage. These new transport demand will require new or deployment of existing bus and PLB vehicles. Third, it is the government's established policy that public transport services should basically be run by the private sector in accordance with commercial principles, so as to ensure that the services are the most efficient and can respond to market conditions promptly and flexibly without relying on public monies. The government will provide public transport operators with the necessary policy support and facilitation, but there is currently no plan to procure green vehicles and entrust their operation and management to operators. Having said that, to encourage green transformation of the transport sector, the government has been promoting electrification of commercial vehicles under a multi-pronged approach, including subsidizing trials of different electric commercial vehicles through the New Energy Transport Fund, the Net Fund, and setting up various dedicated funding schemes to promote the wider application of green and innovative transport technologies by the trades. Since the promulgation of the Hong Kong Roadmap on popularization of electric vehicles in 2021, certain franchise bus operators have announced a target timeframe of attaining a full zero-emission fleet and have introduced new generation single and double-deck electric buses for daily services. As at end September 2023, there were a total of 59 registered electric franchise buses. The government understands that the transition to e-buses involves substantial costs for the franchise bus operators. To alleviate the operating and fare increase pressure of operators, we will discuss with them the overall financial arrangements on electrification of their vehicle fleets, where the possibility of providing assistance through subsidies or other means will not be ruled out. As for public light buses, the government has commenced a pilot scheme for electric PLBs for which $80 million has been earmarked. The scheme would provide subsidy for trial of about 30 electric PLBs on various routes for about 12 months. Different models of e-PLBs and quick charging facilities will be tested to evaluate their performances. The EPD will offer successful applicants a subsidy of 80% of the price of each e-PLB on trial under the pilot scheme. To further promote green transformation of the taxi trade, the government has earlier launched the dedicated 100% loan guarantee scheme for battery electric taxis to encourage transition to electric taxis. Meanwhile, the government is extending the e-taxis charging network, including setting up dedicated e-taxi quick charging facilities and mobile quick charging systems, as well as identifying suitable locations across the city such as petrol filling stations, government premises, and short-term tenancy sites for installing dedicated e-taxi quick chargers. The Net Fund has also newly included trial projects on e-taxi charging mode to support the trade to set up dedicated e-taxi quick charging facilities. In addition, $50 million has been earmarked under the Net Fund to subsidize the trade in purchasing wheelchair-accessible e-taxis. The government is pleased to see that the public buses has embarked on the green transformation journey. Next year, the government will formulate a citywide green transformation roadmap and timetable for public buses and taxis to set out further policy measures and directions for phasing out diesel buses and liquefied petroleum gas taxis. Thank you. Mr. Frankie YICK. President, I believe you are aware of my question, that there are two parts to my questions, so there are actually two bureaus present here at the council today, but I can only follow up one question. So I would like to follow up on the green transformation of non-rail public transport. The reply is a bit strange because for buses, you said that you understand the operating difficulties and they may provide subsidies or other assistance. But then for PLBs and taxis, you've already set out a planning for about 3,000 e-taxis in 2027. You only provide a pilot scheme at the moment. How about for the other future taxis? I understand that there is operating difficulty at the moment, but there are still many old taxis on the road. If you are not able to provide subsidies, much like to the bus companies, I'm just afraid that you wouldn't be able to achieve the target set out in your roadmap. I really hope that you can give us more clear messages because the operators are afraid that they're not able to achieve the target and they're quite worried. Undersecretary for Environment and Ecology. Thank you, Mr. Yick, for your question. As stated in the policy address by the CE, by 2024, the government will roll out the green transformation green map or green roadmap for taxis and PLBs. And we hope that by the year 2027, there will be about 700 e-buses and 3,000 e-taxis commissioned on the road. Mr. Yick is concerned with e-PLBs, and we have already stated in our reply that we would not rule out the possibility of providing assistance through subsidies or other means. For taxis, we have stated out different assistance to be provided other than the dedicated 100% loan guarantee scheme for battery electric taxis. The government will also assist taxis in rolling out more charging systems. The Net Fund has also newly included trial projects on e-taxi charging mode to support the trade. As you all know, at the moment, we do need more time to increase the supply of e-taxis. The Net Fund has already approved around applications for about 40 e-taxis, and there are 50 applications still being assessed. 13 of such new taxis have already completed their taxi registration, and license has already been issued, and 3 of them are already now on the road. In the first half of the year, we have already set out the roadmap for green transformation, as in how we can achieve the target of zero emissions by 2025. Please allow us with more time. We would, of course, update members at a later date on the progress. For public buses, we are also faced with many different challenges. At the moment, there is not any model that can meet the demand of being on the road for the entire day. We do need to identify suitable models. We have already earmarked 80 million to roll out a pilot scheme for electric PLBs. The scheme would provide subsidy for trial of about 30 electric PLBs on various routes for about 12 months. And we would also test out different models of e-PLBs and quick charging facilities. earlier on, we have already promulgated the roadmap on electric vehicles and have also consulted on the scheme on rolling out EPLBs. We have also provided charging systems for EPLBs in some of the transport interchanges, such as the one in Kowloon Tong. We will also work with PLB operators to work on pilot scheme. And by rolling out these schemes, we'll be able to identify the most suitable plan for Hong Kong. And we will provide suitable assistance when necessary. Thank you. Mr. Chow Siu-chung, I don't think, Mr. Yick, well, I don't think she has answered my question. Well, if you want, we want all the taxis and PLBs to become e-vehicles. She hasn't answered my question. Well, you have raised your question. Undersecretary, do you have any further supplement? Well, I believe we do need some more time to review the roadmap and future development plans. When we have more specific progress, we will update members. Mr. Chow Siu-chung, President, if you look at the 10 years before pre-COVID, we would see that from 2008 to 2018, there's been a 14% increase in passengers for public transport. And for MTRC, so it has increased 30% from 2008 to 42% in 2018. And at the same time, for public light buses, passengers from 2008, about 16.1%, it has dropped to about only 14% in 2018. There is a decrease in passenger and therefore it has caused much difficulties to the operators, and they're not able to pay good remuneration to the drivers, and therefore they're not able to actually improve their performances and services. In future, there will just be more emphasis on railway and less on PLBs. What are some of the measures you can take to ensure that PLBs were able to operate in a stable environment and to able to provide appropriate remuneration for the PLB drivers? You have already asked your question. Now, please do not speak for too long. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for your question. As I said in my main reply, PLB is more of like a complementary service to try to meet the demand of public transport in less densely populated areas. In the new development areas, when there are new railway to be commissioned, we will assess the transport situation. There would, of course, be PLB service in those areas. We'll be able to see an increase in passengers in new areas. We have always been taking a multi-pronged approach to assist the PLB sector. For designated PLBs, they can actually apply to the TD to adjust the fares based on the demand. In 2022, the TD has already reviewed their internal process and has streamlined the applications for fare adjustment. The TD in the third 3 quarters of 2023 have approved the fare increase of 170 PLB routes, and we have also seen actually improvement of the various routes, and to ensure that PLBs could be more competitive to attract more passengers. In October of 2022, there's actually real-time information for the designated PLBs, and passengers can actually use the mobile app to view the real-time information of such PLBs. This can also attract more passengers to take PLBs instead. That is, PLB operators can also better manage their fleet and to enhance their operating efficiency. This is my response to Mr. Chow. Thank you, President. Mr. Chen Ziu-hong. Thank you, President. So the Undersecretary said that the first round of application for the subsidy has the deadline has already passed, but then there are not that many people to apply for such a loan guarantee scheme, because even if there is a 100% loan guarantee, they would still need to spend around 200 to 400,000 to purchase EPLBs. Please ask your question. I'm just afraid that due to low enrollment, this would naturally not go ahead. Would you actually try to increase the support or the assistance so that more operators will be willing to join? Undersecretary, thank you for your question. As I said earlier, we are now rolling out pilot scheme in phases. Well, we have started with Kwun Tong and Suffolk Road on Kowloon Tong. So these are two of our trial transport interchanges. So the application deadline was on November 17, and we received 4 applications. And we will provide a subsidy of 80% of the price of each EPLB on trial under the pilot scheme. So it can reach a maximum of 10% of the total PLB fleet. Well, every time we complete an application, we hope that we'll be able to push forward the trial as soon as possible. We're thinking of starting the trial in the first quarter of 2024. We maintain an active communication with the sector to listen to their views. In future, when we roll out new schemes, we would also consider those that would be suitable for Hong Kong. Thank you.
The fourth question, the Honorable CHU Kwok-keung. Thank you, President. It has been recently reported that students were found to be playing with carrot knives or nasal snorting energy bars, which are popular on the mainland during non-lesson time. Although these toys are packaged as new stress-relieving toys, they in fact carry potential hazards. For instance, wielding carrot knives can cause injuries to others, and some packaging even bear violence inciting expressions such as "stab whoever you like" or you dislike. As for nasal snorting energy bars, they contain essential oils of unknown composition, and their twin tube design can cause children to mistakenly stick the tubes into their nostrils, damaging their nasal mucosa and nervous system. These toys are already available in Hong Kong and sometimes at stationery shops. In this connection, will the government inform this council how it will regulate the import, sale, and possession of toys with potential hazards, and how it will strengthen law enforcement, inspection, investigation, and publicity? 2, whether it will consider reviewing the Toys and Children's Product Safety Ordinance, as well as updating relevant definitions and provisions therein in the light of the emergence of toys with potential hazards. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And 3, how the Education Bureau will step up parent education as regards the safety of new toys, and whether it will provide schools with guidelines on the prevention of such relief stress-relieving toys with potential hazards to be available in schools. Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development. President, having consulted the Education Bureau, our consolidated reply to various parts of the question is as follows. The government attaches great importance to the safety of toys and children's products and has enacted the Toys and Children's Product Safety Ordinance, CAP 424, to regulate the manufacture, import, and supply of toys and children's products for local consumption. The ordinance sets out the statutory safety standards of toys and children's products and stipulates that a person must not manufacture, import, or supply a toy unless the toy complies with all the applicable requirements contained in one of the toy standards specified in Schedule 1 to the ordinance. A person who contravenes this provision is liable to a maximum penalty of imprisonment for 1 year and a fine of $100,000 on first conviction, and is liable to a maximum penalty of imprisonment for 2 years and a fine of $500,000 on subsequent conviction. The safety standards set out in the ordinance are international standards or standards adopted by major economies. The government keeps in view any updates or amendments to the safety standards so as to amend the schedules to the ordinance on an annual basis to update the safety standards applicable to toys and children's products supplied in Hong Kong, ensuring that the standards are up to date and operationally feasible. The last update came into operation on August 1st this year. As regards the amendments for next year, we just launched a public consultation on December 1st on proposed updates of the safety standards applicable to toys and 6 classes of children's products. We plan to present the amendments to the Council in the first quarter of next year. Moreover, the Toys and Children's Product Safety Additional Safety Standards or Requirements Regulation, or the regulation, stipulates that a toy supplied in Hong Kong must comply with additional safety standards or requirements for toys supplied in Hong Kong, including the carrying of identification markings, that is the full name and address of the manufacturer, importer, or supplier, and bilingual warnings or cautions with respect to the safekeeping, use, consumption, or disposal applicable to the toy, and the compliance with the requirements on concentration of phthalates contained in a toy. As the enforcement agency of the ordinance, the Customs and Excise Department proactively conducts surveillance in the market and online shopping platforms. Based on risk assessment, the department will test purchase different toys and children's products and pass them to the government laboratory for safety tests. Besides, the department also acts on complaints received in cases referred from other government departments or organizations and take appropriate enforcement action based on facts and evidence. In addition, the department will actively follow up on information about suspected and safe toys and children's products obtained from different sources, such as the media, and measures taken by the mainland and overseas against certain toys and children's products, and information about safety issued by law enforcement agencies and institutions of product safety outside Hong Kong. During the 3-year period from 2021 to the end of November this year, the CNED received 67 complaints in relation to toys or children's products, conducted more than 5,200 surveillance visits or spot checks, and investigated 88 cases. During the period, CNED prosecuted individuals or companies involved in 12 cases. All defendants, including 9 persons and 3 companies, were convicted and fined by the court with an amount ranging from $3,000 to $32,000. The toys involved were lanterns, toy guns, wooden letter puzzles, plastic beads, squeeze toys, magnetic toy beads, joint mats, and toy gun sets, etc. Furthermore, CNED issued 20 prohibition notices to prohibit related persons from supplying products that were believed to be unsafe for a specified period of time, and issued 97 warning letters. Meanwhile, CNED also conducted 24 bliss checks at boundary control points to combat the import of unsafe toys and children's products into Hong Kong. In addition to that, the CNED carries out compliance promotion to traders to help them to understand the relevant requirements of the ordinance. With regard to publicity and education, the CNED organizes toys and children's product safety talks and distributes pamphlets about the ordinance to students and parents, introduces and shares safety information of toys and children's products to ensure their safety. Regarding school education, EDB supports homeschool cooperation and promotes parent education through schools. Parents are responsible for the protection and upbringing of their children to cultivate proper values and foster whole person development. Parents are helped to acquire the necessary parenting knowledge and skills in a systematic manner. The EDB has put in place curriculum frameworks on parent education for kindergartens, primary schools, and secondary schools by phases since 2021. The curriculum frameworks point out that parents should provide a safe and supportive family environment for their children, cultivate their children's self-management skills, good character and positive attitudes, encourage them to adopt a healthy lifestyle. Besides, EDB disseminates important messages on supporting physical and psychological development of students through the one-stop parent education website, Smart ParentNet. Its Facebook and Instagram pages and YouTube channel will continue to provide parents with diverse education resources and support so that they can master parenting knowledge and skills for promoting children's whole person development. The EDB has provided schools with guidelines and reminded them to cultivate a safe and orderly learning environment for students. In the school administration guide for aided schools provided by EDB, school rules should set out the expected conduct and behavior of students in schools so that students can develop self-discipline. Schools should guide, protect, and educate students in order to prevent behavioral problems in students' schools, and parents have to work closely to nurture the next generation with positive values and attitudes. Mr. Chu, I have this carrot knife. Well, it is now very fashionable after YouTube's were uploaded to the internet. And there is also a syringe to inject things into a chick to relieve stress. These are horrifying toys, and they're available online. So the reply from Secretary failed to plug this loophole. Apart from regulating the components and raw materials for toys, I'd like to know whether there is anything to prevent the spread of violence among students through these YouTubes and horrifying toys. Thank you. Yes, we have noted reports on these two products, and the CNED has received complaints against carrot knives. It has taken immediate follow-up actions, and according to samples available in the market, the toy looks like a knife but is made of plastic. There is no metal. Under ISE BN71, we've tested the toy for sharp edges, and the conclusion is carrot knives are in compliance with our relevant standards and regulations. As for other stress relief toys such as nasal snorting energy bars and a syringe for chickens, I think they are not very prevalent in Hong Kong. We're not able to carry out safety tests for them, and we're not able to buy them. According to overseas platforms, these products are not really toys and products for children, not for local consumption in Hong Kong. Since they are not toys or products for children, and if they're not regulated by legislation in Hong Kong, they are subject to the Consumer Product Safety Ordinance and regulations. The CNED will keep an eye on the supply of such products in the market. If they are not in compliance with the general safety requirements under the Consumer Product regulation, then the CNED will take action. As regards online shopping, standards for toys are different in different jurisdictions, so shops or toys purchased overseas may not fulfill our local safety standards. So parents and consumers have to be mindful of the risk and hazards. They cannot really trace the source of these products, and parents have to consider whether toys purchased are fit for their children. The purpose of the ordinance is to safeguard the safety of children or toys safety. As for the use of toys, I believe parents and schools are able to provide proper guidance for children. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, President. While we say that these products are marketed as toys to relieve stress, and we don't want our students to use them, but this goes to show that our children need the ways and means to relieve stress. So will the administration consider designing products or toys for relieving stress? There may even be apps developed for our students for stress relief. Secretary. Indeed, through education on values and promotion of whole person development, we should prepare our children on how to cope with stress. Of course, during recess, in school time, students can play board games, they can chat with their fellow students. These are ways to relieve stress. And children may have their own interests and habits. They may take up sports or musical instrument and other activities. These are proper ways to cope with stress. As regards whether the EDB will design apps or games, now we have got parent-child chess and board games. In our positive value campaign for parents, we have mascots involving a family covering parents and kids. We have various games and board games where parent and child can play together. We have roving exhibitions and publicity activities in different parts of the territory to promote the board games. We want to foster positive development of our students in various ways. Ms. Chan Yip-ming, according to the reply, there's been over 5,000 surveillance checks. And as mentioned in the reply, in the question, there are carrot knives and nasal snorting energy bars available in the market, and we can assess the potential impact. Carrot knives can be used for fighting, and nasal snorting energy bars can lower students' vigilance against substance abuse. So I hope we can have toys that promote healthy development of our children. Hopefully there can be a regular exchange between the CNED and the EDB. Please do not just act on complaints, and there should be regular release of a checklist to enhance the awareness of parents. Secretary, I thank Ms. Chen for her proposals. We will closely monitor the import of such toys into Hong Kong, and we will do our work according to the relevant legislation. The CNED and Consumer Council from time to time publish warnings and appeals to the public. Members of the public should take note of such notices, and in buying toys and children's products, parents should take note of these notices. to protect our children from harm in using such toys or from improper use of toys. Parents, in buying toys, should look for toys suitable for their children. As I mentioned, toys manufactured overseas may not comply with our local standards, and so there are risks involved. In buying toys, parents should make an informed choice. We will also work with the CNED to prevent the import of toys and children's products that may harm our children. The CNED will carry out inspections, surveillance checks to stop the flow of such toys into Hong Kong. They should not be available for sale in here. Mr. Dennis Leung, in the main reply of the Secretary, he only focused on the relevant legislation, but the government should look at it from another perspective. Are these toys hazardous and harmful to our children and adolescents, so that the government can take preventive measures, because children can imitate things easily. Today, a child may be playing a plastic knife, and tomorrow he may escalate, and we want to prevent tragedies. Will the government adopt measures to prevent tragedies? Secretary. Now, let me address this question from the perspective of education. As mentioned by Mr. Yao, time and again, parents have to be careful in choosing toys for their children. In parents' education, we do tell parents that they have every responsibility to protect and nurture their children. It's important that children have positive values. It's true that children are good at imitation. If they play with toys with rather undesirable values, even though it's perfectly safe, that may not be a suitable toy. So we are going to work on the following parenting aspect. We will invite experts to share with parents how to choose the right toys for their children. This will be part of our parent education plan. We will continue to promote homeschool cooperation in helping students to build up positive value. Thank you. Ms. Yong Hoi-yen, we have to protect our children on all fronts. Unscrupulous merchants may use toys, may market weapons or harmful weapons under pretext of providing toys to children. So we may want to take it up with online shopping traders. They have the duty to check these products. They have to ensure that toys would not be sold under the guise, weapons will not be sold under the guise of toys. Secretary, well, we have liaison with other economies. There is exchange of information if there are hazardous toys available in the market. And we will also test toys in accordance with local regulations and international standards. In the products mentioned by members, the CNED will find these products as soon as possible and carry out tests. And when we have test results, we will liaise with other economies to see whether there is any regulation over such products and whether we should amend our regulation as appropriate, and whether we should appeal to the public or provide guidelines to parents and schools. Even if these toys fulfill with our safety standards, are they suitable for play by our children, whether the toys will cause harmful effects on the mind and physical safety of our children? Thank you.
Question number 5, Mr. LAM San-keung. Thank you, Mr. President. The Children Proceedings Parental Responsibility Bill, or the bill, seeks to reform the law relating to responsibilities of parents for children and to provide that in determining certain questions in the children proceedings, a court must regard the best interests of a child as the paramount consideration. The government conducted a public consultation on the bill in 2015 and explained the reasons for not introducing the proposed legislation at this stage in its reply letter to the Panel on Welfare Services of this Council dated the 5th of July this year. In this connection, the government informed this Council, 1. Given that, as mentioned in the aforesaid letter, the opposing views that the bill could not help divorced parents in resolving conflicts were received during the public consultation, whereas there are views that the legislative intent of the bill is to clarify parents' due responsibilities for children and to protect children's interests, which has nothing to do with helping divorced parents in resolving conflicts of the government's justifications for using the opposing views as a reason for not introducing the legislation at this stage. And 2, as there are views that, as mentioned in the letter, the panel passed motions in February 2016 and May 2017 requesting the government to postpone the introduction of the bill pending the provision of more support measures for the families concerned, whereas the letter also mentioned that the government had already implemented many support measures, indicating that the panel's concerns had been allayed of the government's justifications for still not introducing the proposed legislation at this stage. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President, the Labour and Welfare Bureau prepared the draft Children Proceedings Parental Responsibility Bill, or the legislative proposal, in 2015 to reform and consolidate the law relating to responsibilities and rights of parents for children, provide for the appointment and powers of guardians, etc. The legislative proposal introduced a statutory list covering parental responsibility encompassing both responsibilities and rights and providing for major decisions concerning the child's upbringing to be made upon express consent of or notification to the other parent, etc. The Labour and Welfare Bureau conducted a public consultation in November 2015 on the legislative proposal. The proportion of stakeholders in support of and in opposition to the legislative proposal at the time was about the same, that is 34.5% on each side, while another 20% consider the proposal worthy of support in principle, but requested additional resources and support measures as a prerequisite. Subsequently, the LECHO Panel on Welfare Services unanimously passed 2 motions in February 2016 and May 2017 respectively, urging the government not to introduce the bill into the LECHO at that stage, pending the provision of more support measures for separated, divorcing or divorced families, including setting up of a maintenance board, assistance to single-parent families in seeking financial support, enhancement of the prevention of divorce and support to divorced families, and setting up visitation centers in various districts. Now, in consultation with the Home and Youth Affairs Bureaus, I'd like to reply to the members' question as follows. 1. According to the result of the public consultation in November 2015, the proportion of stakeholders in support of and in opposition to the proposal was about the same, that is more than 30% on each side. Those in support considered that the legislative proposal could protect children's best interests. Those in opposition considered that the proposal not only cannot help divorced parents in resolving conflicts, but might cause more family problems for families with domestic violence background. Single-parent groups were also concerned that the new requirement for obtaining the other party's consent or giving notification on major decisions would be taken advantage of by the troublemaking party with malicious intent to obstruct and harass their spouse, causing distress to the child and hence undermining the interests of the child. Afterwards, some representatives of groups from the social welfare sector, maintenance concern groups, single-parent groups, and women groups requested the government to first deal with issues of support services for separated or divorced families and default in maintenance payment before proceeding with legislation. The Bureau has always considered that enhancing the law relating to the parental responsibilities and rights on the upbringing of children would help safeguard the interests of children. Considering the views of stakeholders and the panel, the Labour and Welfare Bureau considers that priority should be accorded to promoting the concept of continuing parental responsibility towards children even after divorce, strengthening co-parenting counseling and parenting coordination service, as well as providing a children contact service, so that the legislative proposal should only put forward again when the society has a clearer consensus. 2. Considering the views of the stakeholders and the welfare panel's position, the Social Welfare Department has implemented a series of support measures in recent years to strengthen co-parenting support services for separated or divorced families, including separated, divorcing, or divorced parents and their children. The government increased resources to set up 5 specialized co-parenting support centers in 2019, providing one-stop specialized services for them, including co-parenting counseling, parenting coordination service, parenting groups or programs, and child contact service, so as to assist these parents in carrying out parental responsibilities under the child-focused principles, strengthening parent-child connection, providing support to children affected by the divorce or separation and family change to promote the healthy development and physically and mentally. The 65 integrated family service centers, IFSCs, and 2 integrated service centers also provide a spectrum of preventive, supportive, and remedial services for needy families. In addition, to foster community awareness of the well-being of children of separated, divorced families and promote the message of co-parenting, the department has adopted a multi-pronged approach and enhanced public education and publicity at various platforms, including the dedicated website of Parenthood Goes On, the publication of reference materials on joint parental responsibility, and dissemination of latest information on relevant groups and programs for separated, divorced parents and their children in districts. Meanwhile, the government is committed to improving the effectiveness of the system for collecting maintenance and enforcing maintenance orders. Over the years, a series of improvement measures has been implemented to facilitate the recovery of maintenance payments, as well as publicity and education on related issues. The government also keeps exploring feasible measures to help those who are in arrears with maintenance payments. In this regard, the government will launch through the Community Care Fund a maintenance mediation pilot scheme to assist the parties concerned to resolve disputes through mediation. In addition, the government will continue to collect statistics concerning maintenance so as to better consider the future work direction. To keep abreast of the latest views of stakeholders, in particular, the aforementioned stakeholders who had concerns about the legislative proposal at the time, Social Welfare Department would collect the views of service users through the specialized co-parenting centers and IFSCs for the government to consider whether there is sufficient consensus to put forward the proposal again, and if so, the appropriate timing. Mr. Ambrose Lam, President. Now, as you can see, the government has done a lot, and I acknowledge the effort, but I think the question hasn't been answered. I need to take it up further in relation to the Children Proceedings Parental Responsibility Bill. It has the support of LRC, the 2 legal professional bodies, electrical members, and the community. But in 2015, after the LRC put forward recommendations, 18 years has passed and the legislation has still not yet been enacted. Now, Secretary, can you share your views on this matter? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Ambrose Lam, for the questions. At the time, on the recommendations made by the Law Reform Commission, we drafted the Children Proceedings Parental Responsibility Bill. In 2015, during the public consultation, we received very divergent views from the community. About 1/3 were in support of the proposal. Another 1/3 staged express opposition to the legislative proposal. Now, from the government's perspective, before a consensus is reached in the community on something that affects the public extensively, we should avoid proceeding with legislation. As I said in the main reply, we have 5 specialized co-parenting support centers and also 65 integrated family service centers to help service users. The service users are mostly those who back then were opposed to the legislative proposal. So we would seek their views and see if they have changed their minds about our legislative proposal. Once we understand their views better, we will have a better basis on which we can consider proceeding with legislation, and if so, the appropriate timing. Mr. Lam and Kwong, of course, it is a natural duty for parents to take care of their children. However, the government should also enact legislation to put in place a proper framework for the benefit of the child's well-being. Now, I'd like to give you this example. I come across this case. Now, for 2 children born of wedlock, they have separate different mothers and fathers, and ultimately the social welfare department stepped in to be the guardians. The mother applied to have custody over the children, and yet it is said that the mother could not apply for legal aid because of the GMO, that is the Guardianship of Minors Ordinance. Since the other spouse is still alive. Now, the existing legislation poses a hurdle to resolving this issue. Will legislation be enacted to protect the relevant children, so that in the event of both a mother and father refusing to take care of the child, a close relative or a third party can take up this responsibility? Secretary, thank you. At this stage, the government has no intention to review the GMO, that is the Guardianship of Minors Ordinance. There are a number of requirements under the GMO. Of course, as spelled out by the court, the major principle is to have regard to the best interest of the child. Now, for the case you mentioned, it can be dealt with under Cap 213, that is Protection of Children and Adolescents Ordinance, so that statutory or legal protection can be given to the relevant child who has been abandoned. The Director of Social Welfare will be appointed as the guardian of the child. But usually, if a relative is willing to take up this responsibility, the director will delegate this authority to the close relative. Under the current framework, we strive to provide the best care for the child. Mr. Hon Chow, I understand that there is the issue of collection of maintenance payment in arrears, mentioned in your main reply. Very often, it's very cumbersome to take this issue up through legal proceedings. And very often, children of the divorcing parents bear the brunt in the process. Now, the main reply doesn't spell this out, but my question is whether you consider setting up a maintenance board so that government can step in, like what happens in other jurisdictions, to help the relevant victims of maintenance in arrears to done the maintenance payment. Under Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for the question. We fully understand that no one would want to be the victim of maintenance arrears after going through divorce proceedings. And that is why we have been reviewing the effectiveness of the maintenance system. And perhaps in the interest of time, I will skip this part as I've explained this before. Now, on the issue of maintenance, we've heard diverse views. We've also commissioned consultancy studies on divorce proceedings and maintenance payments. We are still at the stage of exploring options. The primary objective is to enhance the effectiveness of maintenance orders. Now, just for the members' information, as for way forward, we need to first of all collect sufficient data, and then we can perhaps find out how many maintenance orders have been made in a year, the number of cases of maintenance arrears, and the amounts involved. As for legislative proposals, we need to be prudent, especially when the proposal touches on limitation of rights of an individual. We need to balance that with the interests in general. And like the example you mentioned, in other jurisdictions, they run into problems as well. I think that maintenance arrears is not something unique in Hong Kong. This is a common problem faced by different jurisdictions. Now, we are not relaxing our effort. You must have read in the Chief Executive's policy address that then through the Community Care Fund, the Maintenance Mediation Pilot Scheme will be rolled out. The purpose of this pilot scheme is to save the relevant parties from lengthy court proceedings so that they can resolve disputes and save costs at the same time. Ms. Doreen Kong, thank you. In most common law jurisdictions, either legislation or reforms have been put in place to revamp the family law system or to introduce the concept of parent responsibility. Now, if Hong Kong government continues to delay its progress in this regard, will we be lagging behind other common law jurisdictions, especially in terms of family law in these common law jurisdictions? Secretary. Thank you. Indeed, in common law jurisdictions, especially in the western side of the world, they have revamped the family law system. The Law Reform Commission and the Labor and Welfare Bureau at the time prepared the draft bill. But as explained in the main reply, when we put forward this legislative proposal, we were met with opposition from 30% or more of those who gave us views. So we think that we should be careful in collecting more views, especially since 2019. We've set up 5 specialized co-parenting support centers. We also have 65 integrated family service centers. Through these centers, we strive to contact these service users again, especially those who were in opposition to the proposal, and see whether they have changed their mind about the proposal so that we can drive at a consensus. Now, in other jurisdictions, legislation might have been enacted. There may be merits in their systems. But in our society, we need to first allay the opposing views and concerns before we can move forward. Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, President. On safeguarding the best interests of children, we've had a lot of discussions on this matter at the meetings of the Bills Committee on mandatory reporting on child abuse cases, which I chaired. Now, I have this suggestion for your consideration, Secretary. Since the paramount principle is to have the best interests of the child in mind, if the child is actually a teenager, age 12 to 18, or those who are actually studying in a tertiary institution, can we include the child, so-called child's will, in this list? If this child is willing to contact either parent, then can his wish be granted so that we can at least take a step forward towards meeting the frameworks in these jurisdictions? That is to include the child's wishes in the list. Secretary. As we discussed with stakeholders, we considered whether adjustments could be made to the proposal to allay their concerns. Now, some 30% of respondents were opposed to the legislative proposal during the public consultation in 2015. They were particularly concerned about domestic violence cases. Now, if the other spouse is involved, they are concerned that they might be harassed, thereby undermining the interest of the child. So we have to allay their concerns. If we are to make any change to the existing legislation, we need to address the concerns of these women, especially in the grassroots sector. Only by addressing these concerns could we move forward. As mentioned, the Social Welfare Department will continue to collect views through the 5 specialized co-parenting support centers and the integrated family service centers. We will be contacting the relevant groups and see whether we have been able to allay their concerns and see whether we could arrive at a consensus. We need to start with the collection of views first. Ms. Eunice Yung. The public consultation was conducted in 2015. It's been 7 or 8 years since then. In other jurisdictions, the parental responsibility model has been put in place for a number of years. The model has been subject to reviews as well. There are concerns whether this could lead to more matrimonial or family proceedings or proceedings relating to the child's welfare. So will the government publicize, for example, the welfare list as set out in the main reply, so that when you promote this bill, you tell the public that it's about a change in mindset? What has been done to change the mindset of parents over the years? Secretary. Thank you, President. I thank Ms. Yung for your questions and your suggestions. As I said, as for our way forward, we will be discussing with the relevant stakeholders through the centers. Along these lines, it's been 7 years since the last consultation exercise. Meanwhile, we should perhaps make reference to overseas experience to see whether the concerns can be addressed. Right now, I can't tell you a definite answer. We need to first gauge the public's views before deciding our next step.
LEE Chun-keung.
Last question seeking an oral reply. Mr. Michael Lee. Thank you, President. There are views that the middle class has all along paid large amounts of tax but enjoyed few welfare benefits, which, coupled with the high cost of living, high global interest rates, and persistently high property prices, means they pay more for supporting parents, healthcare, and children's education. This puts the middle class under immense pressure in life. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Whether it will set up a commission on the affairs of the middle class to fully review the policies and measures about the middle class, and to put forward concrete and comprehensive strategies in a focused manner so as to ease the burden on middle-class families in life. If so, of the details; if not, the reasons for that. 2. Whether it has considered introducing tax allowance for children's educational expenses to ease the burden on the middle class. If so, of the details; if not, the reasons for that. And 3. As it is learned that retired middle-class seniors, especially retired civil servants and professionals, often live solely on their savings and do not qualify for the government's cash benefits for the elderly other than the old age allowance or the old age living allowance, which is subject to an asset test. Whether the government has considered enhancing the support for middle-class seniors. If so, of the details; if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Thank you, President. First of all, I thank Mr. Michael Lee for his question, which allows me to respond on behalf of the government to an issue of public concern, and this is how to support the middle class. Having consulted the Labor and Welfare Bureau and the Civil Service Bureau, we give a consolidated reply as follows. As mentioned by the Chief Executive in his 2023 policy address, the government aims to create a vibrant economy for a caring community, making Hong Kong a better place for different social groups. The government will continue to strengthen the economy and improve people's livelihood through various policy measures, supporting Hong Kong's pursuit of high-quality development and enhancing Hong Kong people's quality of life. All these measures will also benefit the middle class. The middle class is a generic term with no universal definition. On the one hand, the term can generally refer to one's economic background, academic qualification, income, or asset level. On the other hand, it may also reflect one's lifestyle and values. Since there is no objective criterion to define middle-class individuals or households, it is hard to devise targeted policy measures to meet their specific needs. However, this does not mean that the government ignores the needs of the middle class. The government consults extensively during the preparation of the policy address and the budget every year. The public may express their views through these channels, thus allowing us to fully consider different voices and formulate appropriate measures to respond to the needs of different groups in society. The consultation exercise for the 2024-25 budget has just been launched, and we are more than willing to listen to suggestions from members and the public in this respect. On supporting middle-class people, one idea we often hear is that the government should reduce the tax burden on middle-class individuals as much as possible. When considering whether to adjust recurrent tax measures, such as new allowance or deduction items, we must carefully examine the impact of such proposals on public finance and whether they are in line with the simple and fair principles of our tax regime, so as to strike a balance between reducing the tax burden of taxpayers and maintaining healthy public finance. In fact, Hong Kong has all along maintained a simple and low tax regime. On salaries tax, the tax liability is calculated based on either the taxpayer's net chargeable income at progressive tax rate or the taxpayer's net total income at the standard tax rate of 15%, whichever is lower. In other words, our salaries tax rate is capped at only 15%, compared to other jurisdictions such as Singapore, with its highest individual income tax rate of 24% starting from the year of assessment 2024, and the United Kingdom with its highest individual income tax rate of 45%. Hong Kong's salaries tax rate is at a relatively low level globally. Furthermore, Hong Kong also provides generous allowances under salaries tax. In the year of assessment 2021-22, even before the one-off tax reduction measure took effect, the overall average effective tax rate for salaries taxpayers was only about 8%, a very light tax burden. To ease the burden on taxpayers in supporting their children, the government has increased the basic child allowance and the additional child allowance for each child born during the year of assessment from $120,000 to $130,000 starting from the year of assessment 2023-24, as proposed in the 2023-24 budget. On educational expenses for children, it was announced in the 2019 policy address that the student grant would be regularized starting from the 2020-21 school year, with secondary day school, primary school, and kindergarten students each eligible for an annual grant of $2,500. In addition, the government has over the years also rolled out timely one-off relief measures under the budget, such as reducing taxpayers' salaries tax and tax under personal assessment, providing rate concession, paying the examination fees for school candidates sitting the Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education examination, etc. All these measures have helped ease the tax burden on the middle class and other taxpayers. Besides, I must point out that the government runs a non-contributory social security system to provide suitable cash assistance for the needy. Comprising the Comprehensive Social Security Assistance Scheme, and the Social Security Allowance Scheme, which includes the old age living allowance, old age allowance, and disability allowance. Currently, about 1.24 million, or more than 70% of Hong Kong elderly people aged 65 or above, are Social Security recipients. Most of the cash assistance schemes are means tested, in line with their aims of assisting those persons in need of financial support. Retired civil servants are also eligible for retirement benefit as set out in their terms of appointment. While we understand members' concerns about the retired middle-class elderly, the government also has to balance the needs of different classes and ensure the proper use of public funds in policymaking. In any event, the government fully recognizes the key contributions of middle-class individuals to society and understands that many people are concerned about the problems and challenges faced by the middle class. When formulating relevant policies, we will work with relevant policy bureaus to study the issues involved, carefully consider the views of members, and continue to assist middle-class individuals to overcome challenges and making more contributions to society and the economy of Hong Kong. As I mentioned earlier, the consultation exercise for the next financial year's budget has just begun. We will continue to listen to the views of various sectors of the community. Thank you, President. Mr. Michael Lee. It's surprising that the Secretary gave me such bromides in the main reply. He failed to respond to my questions. It shows the SAR government has little clue what the middle class and the sandwich class are facing. These people are just barely able to buy private flats, and they do not qualify for subsidized flats. Now we have high interest rates, high cost of living, high home prices. A study shows that for a middle-class family, the home-related expenses take up 40% of their income. For those in public rental housing, that expense makes up 12%. So grassroots family actually have more money left. For middle-class families, much of their money goes to paying for bills. They don't see a future. So for the government, will the government seriously consider setting up a middle-class commission to find out what it means to be in the middle class? And one of the functions of this commission is to help middle-class families save money. Secretary, I thank Mr. Lee for his question. We don't have a commission on the middle class in our portfolio, but we put substance over form. In our work, in the policy address and the budget, there are measures benefiting people from different social classes, and the middle class is one of those benefiting from the measures. We need to look beyond the form. Let's look at the substance. We need to find out what the middle class wants. We looked at the definition and the situation elsewhere. What the middle class across the globe needs. They come down to several things. First, concerns about the cost of living. Second, career prospect. Third, as Mr. Lee rightly pointed out, housing issues. And fourth, personal debt. So it's about satisfaction with life. So some of that is metaphysical in nature and less about material well-being. So there are some broad concepts about the middle class, but let's come back to Hong Kong. Let's look beyond just our bureau, and let's also look at the policy bureau, the policy address, and the budget. There are measures about the concepts I mentioned. First, on cost of living concerns. As I said in my main reply, education for children matters. As Mr. Lee will know, as a responsible parent, the $2,500 student grant has been regularized. Second, career. This applies to not just certain sectors. We need to stimulate the economy and grow the economy. The policy address is about creating a vibrant economy. Different policy bureaus launch measures to attract talent and firms. The goal is to grow the economy and create quality jobs. The middle class will benefit in the process. Mr. Lee also identified the housing problem. There are large development projects being planned by the Housing Bureau and Development Bureau. On other occasions, we will hear more information on that. Now, the macro issues aside, what the middle class wants, let's also look at what the government offers. On education, we put in vast resources into education. The middle class benefits from these measures. Mr. Lee's question touches on retirees in the middle class, retired civil servants. We launched annuities. For seniors, there are silver bonds. We want to give seniors more options to manage their retirement. Indeed, we don't have a commission on the middle class, but in substance, we have policies in various areas catering to the needs of different social classes, including the middle class. Professor Priscilla Leung. Deputy President, the Secretary's reply lacks focus. 10 years ago, we called for a $2 scheme for transport. The middle class told us this is the only promise delivered. After people in the middle class retire, they no longer have anything left. People come to us for help. They claim their medical insurance once, and then the insurance is gone. They have no money left for costlier health insurance options. So here's the question. Someone in the middle class retires, they have paid taxes for their whole entire life. They get a $2 transport scheme. That's the only help available. But when it comes to medical insurance, once they lose access, can the government do more? These people don't want to add to the burden on the public healthcare system. These people may want to look for another job after retirement. Has the government looked into ways to help these people with medical insurance? Secretary. Professor Leung's question is that the middle class paid much of the tax, but after they retire, they don't get the benefit. And now let me discuss taxation. There were 3.7 million working people, less than half. That's 49% of the working population were rated as salaried taxpayers in the year of assessment 2021 to 22. So that's less than half. And let's look at the salaried taxpayers. The top 5% pay more than 58% of the salaried tax. So for salaried taxpayers, a small portion, 5%, paying nearly 60% of our salaried tax revenue. Now for those on the lower income, more than 20% of the salaried taxpayer pay less than $710 on average in the year of assessment 2021 to 22. So that's the macro picture. That's the salaried tax we are collecting from the population. Now, Professor Leung mentioned medical insurance. We also have measures for individuals in terms of support measures involving tax, so that people have a stronger incentive to arrange health insurance. So For salaries tax and tax under personal assessment, we have raised the tax allowance. When these people buy voluntary health insurance for themselves or for their dependents, each year for each insured person, the tax deduction is capped at $8,000 per year. That measure started in the year of assessment 2019 to 20. So along with those other measures I mentioned, there is an incentive for people to take out voluntary health insurance to manage their retirement. Professor Leung may have individual cases in mind on how people can claim on their health insurance. So this will depend on the facts of each individual case. Professor Leung, please let us know which part of your question the Secretary failed to answer. It's not about the individual case. These people have retired and they no longer have the health insurance. So can the government talk to the insurance sector about this issue? Please have a seat, Professor Leung. Secretary, please continue. We talked to the insurance authority and the insurance sector. The people may be looking for certain things with the insurance products. We can talk to the member after the meeting. We're happy to look into this. Mr. Tommy Chung. Thank you, Deputy President. The Secretary touched on another area, education. We offer 15 years of free schooling. But people have to go to certain schools. For some in the middle class, they want their children to go to private kindergartens where the parents pay full fees. For private international primary and secondary schools, parents pay full fees. 15 years of schooling. Each year, the fees may be $30,000 to $40,000. The Liberal Party has been calling for this. For those in the middle class looking for better education, why not issue education vouchers? The amount is the same as the subsidy going to those subsidized schools. $30,000 or $40,000 will do. Let money follow the user instead of making parents send their children to certain schools. This gives the middle class a choice when they want their children to go to better schools. Will the government consider education vouchers? Thank you. I note Mr. Cheung's point. Middle-class families have concerns about the cost of education. That's why we have a range of measures. For day primary schools and kindergartens, there is the student grant. Mr. Cheung also mentioned another point, the tuition fees for international schools. As I said earlier, the middle class wants a range of things. The recent policy address proposes measures to encourage childbearing. At different stages in life, the government tries to offer subsidies or financial support. Families want support in various forms. We keep listening to people's views. We also look at areas where we can intervene, and that includes the student grant. We know the comments. The next step, as I just said, is that we have just started the consultation for the upcoming budget, and we will be happy to listen to views. Many members wish to speak on this item, but that's all the time we have for, so please follow up on this issue on other occasions.
Government bills, first reading. Telecommunications Amendment